Bonjour tout le monde, c'est moi Charlotte et aujourd'hui nous étudierons 20 verbes communs au futur. So everyone, my name's Charlotte, hi. Today we will look at, or we will study 20 common French verbs in the future tense. So, on y va, let's go. Just turn all that off, okay. So this is mainly for members of my French club. As you'll know, or as you may not know if you're new to my channel, every month, every last Thursday of the month, I create a video tutorial which accompanies a handout that I've created, and I send this to my club members. So the handout looks like this. This is the paper form, and we've got some exercises which we'll do together today. You can also do them separately or in your own time. So this is my teacher copy, yours might look a little bit different. And then there's a link to this video, and there's also a link to some further practice that you can do for free online. Check your understanding of what you've learnt today and learn a little bit extra, and have a useful link where you can go back and find free exercises and tests to complete. So we'll start off with this. We might have to zoom in. So what this is verb tables, basically 3 verb tables in the future tense with common regular verbs. So here we have the verb parler, parler, to speak, je parlerai, tu parleras, il, elle, on parlera, nous parlerons, vous parlerez, il, elle parleront. I'm just seeing whether that's actually visible. Okay, maybe we'll play a little bit around. So let's see if I can zoom in a bit more. So this is the parler one. So that's to speak. So with the future tense, common regular verbs more than common. Any regular verb in the future tense that's an ER verb, if it's regular, bear in mind there are irregular ones which do not necessarily follow this conjugation pattern. But regular verbs in the future tense, when you want to say something like I will speak, we will do that, we will go there in the future tense, then they will have these endings. So instead of going straight back to the stem, parle, which is what you tend to do when you conjugate verbs, you normally take it back down to the stem. You could think of it that way, or you could think future tense has the whole verb, the infinitive, the parler bit, P-A-R-L-E-R, plus some additional endings. Okay, so you could think of it either as adding the whole of aurait for the je parlerai, or you could think of it as parle or parler plus an AI. So whatever's easiest. I mean, I would tend to practice, I suppose, whatever's easiest for you. Either take it back down to the stem and add aurait, aura, etc. Or think of it as the infinitive verb plus the endings AI, AS, A, etc. So as you prefer. I've underlined the whole of the ending, but you can see if I cover the last endings, it actually takes you back to the stem of the verb. With parlerai, je parlerai avec Marie dans quelques semaines. I will speak with Marie in a few weeks' time. With that, the ER isn't pronounced E like it is in the infinitive form. Its pronunciation changes because it's followed by additional letters. So instead of parler, which is to speak, that's the infinitive form, this is actually parlerai, parlerai. Okay, so tu parleras, ERAS, ils, elles, on, he, she, or one. Parlera. So the il, elle, on sounds the same as the to form. Parlera. Il, elle, on parlera. Now, the ONS, which you will have seen in the present tense. For example, parle, on, parlons. In the present tense, you take the verb parle down to the stem and you add ONS. So that's quite typical of the nous form of verbs. The only difference with the future as opposed to the present tense is that you would use the infinitive verb. So the ending, if you like, is parlerons instead of parlons. Parlons, present tense, parlerons, future tense. Okay, so EZ at the end of the vous form. That's quite familiar, isn't it? Because most, I can think of fait and et as exceptions, but most verbs in the vous form end with an EZ. Excuse me a sec while I have some tea. Ah oui, c'est bien, c'est ça, j'aime bien. Parlerai. So, aurait is a vous form ending of future ER verbs. For example, mangerai, porterai, donnerai. As it happens, the EZ ending is pronounced I, which is basically like the AI ending, I. So, parlerai and parlerai sound almost exactly the same. Just that's a little note for how different groups of letters can be pronounced in the same way. I'm trying to think what that's called in French. Is it a phoneme? No, so phonemes, little units of sound. Homonyms are words that sound the same as another word. Right, we're getting off the subject. But the point is, EZ you'll probably have noticed from other vous form verbs, okay, in the present tense in particular. Parleront, parleront, ils, elles parleront, they will speak. So, here we have an ONS sound for nous. Nous parlerons, parleront, and then ils, elles parleront, parleront, on, on. There's a slight difference there, but don't worry too much about that. So what you might also notice, especially if I cover them with something, the endings here, et, a, on, et, and on, they're the same endings as the verb avoir in the present tense. So for example, j'ai, tu as, il a, nous avons, vous avez, ils, elles ont. So they're essentially the same endings. If that helps you to remember the future ER verb endings, then there you go, that's great. Right, now let's look at the IR verb, partir, partir. So this is like the verb, other IR verbs. Dormir, finir, partir. Those ones are regular. On this list that we'll see, we have some irregular verbs which end in IR, and they're very common. Okay, and in most of those instances, the endings are the same or similar, but it's the stem of the verb that changes in the future. So we'll look at those afterwards. So here we have je partirai, je partirai. So you can see that we've got the stem. We've got the infinitive verb, je partir, plus the same ending, ai. Partirai, tu partiras, il, elle, on partira. Nous partirons, vous partirez, il, elle partiront. So, the endings, ai, as, a, ons, ez, ont, but preceded here by er, because it's an er verb. Think of it as like the infinitive. And then ir, because this is an ir verb. So if we cover the endings, that's just the infinitive form of the verb. And the endings are the same. Partir means to leave or to depart from somewhere. Not like, oh, I'm leaving my keys here. No, like I'm leaving. I'm leaving this place. I'm going somewhere else. I'm departing. So that's the meaning of that verb. Prendre, to take. Okay, it can also be used with other things like to take the bus or various other little idioms similar to English, but sometimes the verb is different from the verb in English where we would use to take, so just be aware of that. So it's slightly different here in that we've got, instead of the whole verb, instead of the infinitive verb, all of it, prendre with an E written on every conjugation here, we've missed off the E. So this is what happens with regular RE verbs in the future tense. The endings AI, AS, A, ONS, EZ, ONT are the same as the IR and the ER regular verb endings in the future. But you miss off the E from prendre or comprendre, for example. So that leaves us with prendrai. Je prendrai ça demain. Tu prendras. Il, elle, on prendra. These two sound the same, but there's an S on there in the written form. Nous prendrons. Vous prendrez. Vous, you guys. Or vous, remember, could be one person. It's not always plural. One person whom you're addressing formally. Okay? Ils, elles prendront. Prendront. I'm aware, by the way, that this should be quite a loud mic today. Still can't get rid of the background like ee, but you know, je sais, I am trying. Donc, alors, that's regular. I'm not going to give you all the irregular conjugations because that would take forever, but you can find them online. Look for something like conjugaisons irréguliers français futur. Future French irregular conjugations, or verbe au futur irrégulier, irregular verbs in the future. I'll put in my video description at some point some little search terms that you can look for on like Google to find more information about these, or like if you go onto google.fr or google.com if you like, and go on the images and then type in verbe irrégulier français futur, you might even be so lucky as to find some little images that you can look at, take a screenshot of, or just write down. You know, sometimes writing out the conjugations that you see, the act of doing that can help commit it to memory. The other thing to do is to get your verb conjugation book or tool online. You can use wordreference.com, go to their conjugation French to English and check the conjugations of the irregular ones or the regular ones. You can do that anytime, but that's the kind of self advancement you can do in your spare time. Okay, so let's move on. On continue. Ok, nous regarderons ou nous étudierons au début 10 verbes communs et réguliers. So these are 10 common regular verbs. These follow the patterns laid out there. So the infinitive verbs followed by the endings. AI, AS, A, ONS, EZ, ONT. D'accord? And the way I'm going to do it today is I've got the verb, par exemple, numéro 1, porter, and then I've got the personal pronoun, je. Doesn't look majorly focused, does it? Let's see if I can make it a bit more clear. Maybe it's just my eyes. I had an eye test recently, so you will be seeing some new glasses on my face soon. Now I'll take the autofocus off. Alors, porter. Porter. Porter is an ER verb, and I'm looking for the je form. So remember, we take the verb, write it down in its infinitive form. Port. That says porter. That's how you pronounce it. But I'm adding AI to the end. Porterai. Porterai. Porterai can mean to bring, but it can also mean to carry. Je porterai ma sœur quand je reviendrai. I'll bring my sister when I come back. For example, I will do something when I will come back, whatever. So, of course, talking about the future tense, you tend to have kind of little temporal phrases like tomorrow, next year, in the future, things like that. And also you might find if you have several or two clauses or more in the future tense that both of them will be in the future. Both or all of them will be, depending on what's being said. Okay, whereas in English we tend to use the present tense. When I come back, I will have my books. When I see you again, I will bring my sister. Okay, so that's a little bit different. Here we have parler. Parler, to speak. In the to form, parle. What do we do? Put it in its infinitive form like this, which would be parler, but we're adding as. So you can either think of the stem of the verb, parle, and add eras, eura, or you can think infinitive verb, parler, and add as. It's as you wish. Here we have manger. Okay, these are very simple verbs, right? But sometimes it's worth using these because they can be like your basis, your template for applying the rules to other more complex verbs that you learn as you go on. Manger, il, elle. Ooh, what's the il, elle ending for ER verbs in the future tense? So you might think of it like this. Write out the verb manger. That's that bit done. Then the il, elle ending. Remember, it's like avoir in the present tense. Excuse me. J'ai, tu as, il a, nous avons, vous avez, ils, elles ont. Voilà, mangeront. Les filles mangeront de plus demain. It's a nice simple one. Demain, tomorrow. You might also hear the present tense being used for the future, you know. Je viens demain. Okay. Okay. Acheter. 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 Sometimes you hear that verb pronounced acheter with 3 syllables. Acheter. But often it's acheter. Acheter. In fact, it sounds like the letter H. Acheter. I've never thought about that before. Acheter. Acheter. So that's ils, elles, ont. That's the third person. 1, 2, 3. Singulier. Third person singular. Okay, so acheter. Just put an A on the end. Achètera. 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 Il achètera la voiture la semaine prochaine. Elle achètera la voiture le mois prochain. On achètera. Now, on, when you use on, it doesn't always mean one, as in the impersonal one. En France, on parle français. In France, people speak French. You speak French. They speak French. That's an impersonal way of talking about something that happens generally, impersonally. So not talking about any specific person. On parle français. So you can use it, on, the third person singular subject pronoun on, with the same conjugations as il and elle to mean, to talk about something or like a culture, for example, impersonally. But you can also use it to mean we, I think that's the last video I did, using on instead of nous, and changing verbs to conjugate accordingly with the third person singular rather than the third person singular rather than the third person plural. It's confusing. On instead of nous, both meaning we. So, on achètera une nouvelle maison l'année prochaine could mean we are buying, or we will buy a new house next year. That's something we intend to do in the future. Okay, so on can mean we, especially if you hear it or you use it in an informal, friendly situation with people you know. Okay, partir. So we've moved from ER verbs, common, regular ones that follow the future conjugation endings, if you like. We've got partir, and it's in the to form. So, partira, partira. IRAS is the ending, but you can also think of it as the infinitive partir with AS at the end. Partira. Okay, so finir. Or partir is to leave or to depart, okay? Finir, to finish, to end, to have completed something, okay? To finish, basically. Je. It's often useful to learn these in the je form. I mean, in all forms, obviously. But if nothing else, you could just learn these future verbs in the je form, because they're the ones you're going to use. And once you've got the hang of those, you'll probably be able to guess what the two il, elle, on, nous, vous, il, elle versions are. Especially when you get to the ones on the next page, the irregular ones. Because if you can remember the irregular stems of common future tense verbs, but you know the endings of regular future tense verbs, then you can guess and most often be correct of what the conjugations are. Okay, we'll look at those on the next page. Je finirai. Je finirai. Just to clarify, you will have to use these verbs with the subject pronoun. Okay, je finirai les devoirs. Demain. I always think of demain. It's not that far in the future, but it is in the future. Je finirai. Ouais, je finirai un jour, one day. I will finish one day. I can't remember what I was going to say. Ah, yes. So you will use these in French with the subject pronoun. Je, tu, il, elle, on, nous, etc. In some languages, like Italian, you don't have to do that. You just conjugate the verb, and the verb conjugation tells you who you're talking to or about. So this is different. And that's going to be important when we see this, for example, this reflexive verb here with se in front of it. So that will require a double, or it'll require a personal pronoun followed by a reflexive pronoun. You'll see what I mean, okay? On continue. Okay, here we go. So, se divertir means to enjoy oneself. It's a bit like s'amuser, but I've decided to use se divertir. Voilà, ici. Se divertir. In the vous form. So when you have a reflexive infinitive verb, it will look like a normal verb. Might be IR, ER, or RE at the end, but there, it's got this se in front of it, okay? This is what you do with that. So, in the vous form, the reflexive pronoun, which means yourself, or yourselves, is vous. So, but remember, you also need the subject pronoun. So let's change divertir into the vous form. Divertir. Remember, it's the infinitive with EZ at the end. So, when you're saying, you will enjoy yourselves, you will have fun, you guys, or you, someone I'm talking to formally, you don't just say, vous divertirez, because you need to use the subject pronoun and the reflexive pronoun. So you'll say something like, vous vous divertirez à la fête. C'est sûr que vous vous divertirez. Okay? So, you get vous and vous. Je finirai, but vous vous divertirez, because it's a reflexive verb. This happens with reciprocal verbs as well, which is like a se parler. On se parlera demain. We will talk to each other tomorrow. Ils se parleront demain. They will speak to each other. So you need to know reflexive and reciprocal, they're both the same, pronouns which precede infinitive reflexive verbs, and also the little pronouns will be the same as whatever the conjugation is. So you're doing the future tense of that verb in the vous form, as the vous ending, and then you need the vous reflexive pronoun to go in front of it. So if that doesn't mean anything, don't worry about it. Or look at French reflexive verbs. So an example of a very common one. Je m'appelle. Je m'appelle. That means I call myself. I myself call. You yourself will enjoy. Okay? Comprendre. Comprendre. Okay, so okay, yeah. Comprendre. What I should have done is put prendre before this, because any verb that's got prendre in the ending, and I can't think of any others, but we've got prendre and comprendre. This verb will be conjugated in the same way as that one, okay, with just a slightly different, couple more extra words, letters at the beginning. So I'm going to do the prendre first in the nous form. So, nous prendre. Remember, are e verbs that are regular don't have the r and the e, they just have the r. So prendrons, prendrons, oui. Nous prendrons la voiture. Nous prendrons des cadeaux à mes amis. Whatever. So this is going to be similar. So prendre, just put on that, and ez. So instead of having prendre and a z, think of it as prendre without the final e, and then an ez ending, just like all the other vous form future tense endings. Now we've got dire. Dire, that's an re verb. Dire, oui, oui. So in the tu form, dira. Dira. Yeah, so something different happens here. I'd say it's kind of is a little irregular. So, oh no, it's not, because it's an re verb. So that's why I've put it underneath prendre and comprendre. So dire is to say or to tell. So as above, we take the e off and then add the tu ending. Tu diras. Tu diras. You will say, you will tell. Cool, video's getting quite long, isn't it? So they're all regular. Infinitive parts of the verb followed by the endings. And the endings happen to look the same as the endings for the avoir verb in the present tense. Et, a, on, et, and on. Now we're going to see 10 irregular verbs in the future tense. So let's go up a little bit so I can see number 11. Numéro 11. Oh, such a useful verb, but so irregular in many tenses. Aller means to go, right? And you also use it for like, how are you? How are things going? Comment ça va? Right? It's really irregular in lots of tenses. And the future is no different actually, so it doesn't really look like the verb aller at all, but it's useful. So aller changes the stem of the verb to I, are. I know, it's strange, c'est bizarre, non? I, are followed by the normal endings. Irai, I will go. You need to put je in front of it in the je form, so je followed by a verb that starts with a vowel, would shorten down to j'irai. Tu iras, il, elle, on ira. Now, the reason that's useful, I think, I was trying to think of a song that I heard it in. Tu t'iras bien. Everything will be okay. It's a nice little phrase, isn't it? Tu t'iras bien. Tout, T-O-U-T, ira. So tout followed by ira becomes tout ira. Tout ira. You pronounce the T. Let me write it down somewhere so you can see what I mean. Tout, T-O-U-T, that means everything, or all, normally, or in this instance. Tout ira. So we're pronouncing the T because it's followed by an I. Tout ira. Tout ira bien. So that's like the future version of tout va bien. Okay, so you both those underlying parts there. Present tense, tout va bien, tout ira bien. Everything will go or will be, if you like, okay. So that's really irregular. I are. What is with this? Sorry, I must have like. I think I need like a. Is it Rennie that you take? Is Rennie for your tummy? I don't know. I don't take medications like that, but I've definitely got some kind of reflux or whatever. Is that what it is? Do I need an antacid? I don't know. Je sais pas qui c'est. J'en sais rien. Okay, se revoir. This is reflexive. No, this is reciprocal. That must be why I put it in here. So, se revoir. Reflexive. Yeah, it's reciprocal, right? Because revoir, and it's quite unusual because it's got revoir instead of just voir. So voir would be to see, revoir means to see again, and se means to see each other again. Each other. So what we're going to do here, now this is quite irregular. So the verb voir would change to the stem ver, like that. I know, it looks nothing like voir. But because this is revoir, we've got rever, and then we need a nous, O-N-S ending. And then it's reflexive, so the reflexive / reciprocal, they're the same pronouns that precede the verb when it's conjugated. So, nous reverrons la semaine prochaine. We will see each other. I'm just going to check that. Reverrons, oui. So, if ever you're in doubt, if you get a moment of doubt, sometimes I get those, just go online and check a verb conjugation tool, and then you can think, ah, I was right, or I wasn't quite right. This is why I wasn't quite right. Venir. Venir means to come. So this looks a bit different actually. The stem is not V-E-N, but V-I-E-N-D. Vient, viendre, viande, vient, vient. You don't pronounce the D unless it's followed by something else. So, vient, in fact it's viendre, viendre, viendra, viendra. Oui, two form, yeah. Je viendrai. You could also have reviendrai, so similar to up here when you have revoir instead of voir, to see again rather than to see. Here we have to come, but you could have to come back or to come again, which would be reviendra. You will come back again. Tu reviendras, j'en suis sûre. You will come back. So R and an E before some verbs means again or one more time or that kind of thing. So here, so that's all quite irregular. Okay, elements of these stems change in comparison to what was laid out as the patterns to follow for conjugations on the previous page. Okay, but the little endings, a, on, a, they look familiar, don't they? So that might help. So if you can remember how to make irregular stems for the future, and then apply the regular endings, you're on your way. Pouvoir, vouloir, devoir. So these are the modal verbs. These verbs, when conjugated, can be followed by another verb. Okay? Let's have a think now. Where are we? Pouvoir. So, in the present tense, that would be pouvons. But in the future, it's pourrons. Pourrons. So this is the stem of your verb. Pour, je pourrais, tu pourras, pourras, pourrons. 2 R's. Okay, so that's a bit different, isn't it? But it's still got that pou sound. Still got the O and S. Vouloir. Now. Oui, voudra. Il, elle, on. Vous. It's got the same vous sound. But again, a bit like viendra. These are the two I confuse sometimes. Voudra. Il, elle, on voudra. Devoir. That's similar, but it's got an R after the V. So, devront. That's a V and that's an R. Ils devront. Okay, now savoir. I've written it down on here, but I'm just going to double check. So it should be saurais. Je saurais. So I'm going to type in savoir to my verb conjugator. Oui, okay. So instead of save, like savoir, saur, S-A-U-R, like in dinosaur. Saur, saur, and then it's je, so it's A-I. Now, here we've got the two the two auxiliary verbs, avoir et être. So these are important, aren't they? So, instead of have being the stem, you have something a bit like saurais, j'aurais. It rhymes. And that's also in the je form, which is handy. Aurait, like the word aura. In fact, that would be the third person singular, aura. Aura would be il, elle, on, aura. He, she, one, / we will have. Excuse me. What's going on? Mais qu'est-ce qui se passe? Okay, so also, like somewhere else here, if we had the je form of aura or avoir in the future, the je plus a verb that starts with a vowel contracts down to J apostrophe, so a J and an apostrophe, and then you pronounce it as if it's all one word, as if there's no space or apostrophe there. J'aurais, tu auras, mais j'aurais, il, elle, on aura, like the word aura. Okay, être. So this is already very irregular in the present tense. Je suis, tu es, il est, elle est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils, elles sont. Very irregular. But some of the conjugations in the present tense, like some or sont, start with an S, and that's kind of the way I associate the future stem. But if you know the song Que sera, sera, I think is Spanish, then it works quite nicely because the third person singular conjugation is sera. And in fact I've chosen ils, elles, on, the third person singular. So it's a bit like the Spanish or the Italian Que sera, sera. In Italian it would be S-A-R-A, but I think in Spanish it's probably spelled the same way as that, sera. Now then, okay, so the stem of faire, to do or to make, let's go down a little bit. Ready? So the stem here starts with an F, so it looks vaguely like faire. But it doesn't have an A or an I afterwards, it's like that. Strangely, if you just had that word le faire, it means fire. Oh no, it doesn't mean fire. I was thinking of what it actually means, but I doubted myself for a sec. Le feu is fire, but it means iron. Le faire, le faire. I don't know why I was thinking of that. I know what I was thinking. It's because faire, the infinitive verb here, just down there, sounds the same as the stem of its future stem. Faire, faire. On its own, again, probably too much information, that would mean iron. Fire, on the other hand, would be feu. F-E-U. Le faire. But we're using that irregular stem plus the regular endings il, elle, feront or feront, feront. When the fer is followed by something else afterwards, that faire sound that it would be as a noun on its own changes to an e, feront, feront. So let's have a little look. At the bottom here I've got using some of the linguistic structures that we've seen for reference. How do you say the following in French? So we've got they will do or make, actually, that's one of them. So that's this one here. Feront. Ils feront ou elles feront. Ou, par exemple, les garçons feront blah blah blah. Les filles feront blah blah blah. Here's another one. How would we say, comment dit-on? Everything will go well. Everything will be okay, basically. Everything will go well. This is the verb aller. Tout ira bien. When we're talking about everything, le tout, that word, even though it's talking about everything, and you'd think that might be plural, it's actually a singular noun. Okay? Might be all-encompassing, but it functions as a singular noun, so it uses the third person singular. It will be okay. Okay. What will be will be. Que sera, sera. What will be will be. So the word for what in that instance is que. Oui. Que sera, sera, oui. Here's a nice expression. Advienne que pourra. Advienne que pourra. Avenir, avenir. Avenir. So, if you look up que sera, sera, which is the Spanish pronunciation, que sera, sera, let's write it somewhere. Then what you'll find is also this expression, which I just want to check. Advienne que pourra. Advienne que pourra. So here we've got a verb advenir, to happen or take place, but here we've got the verb pouvoir, which we've seen. Pouvoir is irregular and it's got pourra underneath, so that means what will happen, or it will happen what may be. That's nice, isn't it? But anyway, I like the song Que sera, sera. So if that helps, that's how you might be able to remember the future of the irregular verb être, sera. Je serai là, tu seras, il, elle, on sera, seront, serait, seront. Anyway, there's a lot of information there, so hopefully some of that will be useful to you. If you want to join my club and get this handout directly to your email, there's still a bit of time to do that. Just find my details in the description under the video and send me an email and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I'm quite busy at the moment, so that might not be immediately, but if you email me, I'll always get back to you when I can, okay? So we've seen aller, se revoir, venir, pouvoir, vouloir, devoir, savoir, avoir, être, faire. They're all the irregular ones we saw. They're the ones to practice. The regular verbs in the future tense. The regular verbs in the future tense, you just keep the infinitive verb and add the endings et, a, on, et, or on. and the way they look is like this. ER verbs keep the ER plus the endings as mentioned. IR verbs keep the IR plus the endings as mentioned. But when you come to regular RE verbs, you drop the E and then add the AI, AS, etc. So, I hope that's useful. Merci beaucoup et à la prochaine fois. Au revoir.